Welcome to the Sharpe Way Show. So happy that you will give me a part of your evening. I know it's 7:30. Some of you upset. I'm a little bit late sometimes. I apologize. Trying to do this every day can be very challenging, but I am here yet again. And I feel like recently, I've been doing a lot of race stuff recently. And I haven't in the past much at all. I mean, if those of you have been following me for literally years, I've been producing content now, 5 years, give or take more, whatever time that's been. I don't do it that much, except recently. And the reason why I decided to do it again, which I know some of you are like, Larry, enough with the race stuff, because that's in the news, right? They've even decided that the guy who's Syrian, who shot the people in Colorado, that maybe he's really white, so it's racist because he's really a white guy. This is where we are now. So I wanted to bring up a topic that is hot in general, has been hotter in the past, but I kind of want to touch the source. And that is the gentleman who is really the center of the whole concept of anti-racism, and saying that being not racist is simply not good enough, that you as an individual have to be anti-racist. And you will hear often the phrase do the work. You'll hear stuff like that. And it give you the ideas and concepts behind this. He did a TED talk about 6 months ago or so. I don't remember how long ago it was. It was rather long, so I'll try to not make this too long for you guys, but it's going to be a relatively long show. I'm sure you'll sign off and sign on. But I'll take comments also during it, so we'll have some comment work also. But I want to cover how he speaks about it. And for many of the people in this world, they often will use stats that are very true, totally accurate, but their actual solutions aren't great solutions. And that's a common thing that you'll find. I'm considering doing, believe it or not, some of you are going to go crazy. I may actually do Ben Shapiro tomorrow. He talks about there's no such thing as systematic racism. So I'm going to go from anti-racist to no systematic racism and see how those two work. That'll make some people's heads explode. So I think I may do that. But let me walk into this now, if I can, right? I think, hold on, let me grab a couple comments popped up already. I apologize. Hi, Larry. I won't comment at all since I'm pale. I can't even ask a question on topic without ramifications. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm kidding. Of course, I love that. But that's the problem, right? People think that way. And that is the problem in itself. Let me grab him if I can. I think you guys may enjoy this. I will do a little bit of ranting, not a whole lot, but you'll see what I mean. All right.
Well, thank you, Chloe. And
by the way, this gentleman's name is Ibram Kendi. I should be clear on that. He wrote a book. You can check him up. Ibram X Kendi, very, very popular in this world.
And Whitney, and thank you everyone for joining this conversation. And so a few weeks ago on the same day,
the one thing you'll find common, by the way, is when people speak this way, is they always have to speak in a somber way, like this is so serious and somber. They will always do this, right? You'll always do this.
We learned about the brutal murder of George Floyd. We also learned that a white woman in Central Park who chose not to leash her dog and was told by a black man nearby that she needed to leash her dog, instead decided to threaten this black male. Instead decided to call the police.
You guys, I'm sure, remember that, right? When the woman was outside, didn't leash her dog, and then the black man was a bird watcher. This is, New York, right? This is it. Alabama, whatever. They always say the South is so evil, but yet this stuff always happens in the North. So literally, she threatened him. You remember that was caught on video, and he's talking about this now. I wouldn't be so somber about it, but I guess we have to be somber and respectful, I guess.
And claimed that her life was being threatened. And of course, when we learned about that through a video, many Americans were outraged. And this woman, Amy Cooper, ended up going on national TV and saying, like countless other Americans have said right after they engaged in a racist act, I am not racist. And I say countless Americans because when you really think about the history of Americans expressing racist ideas,
watch where he goes,
supporting racist policies, you're really talking about a history of people who have claimed they're not racist, because everyone.
And this is an important piece that he brings up. Again, he links, you know, reality issues with history, and he links everything together. He says, well, people don't want to be called racist. Yeah. But then he links racism directly to a history of racism. And he talks about policy. He has no actual policy. But here we go. Let him keep going.
One claims that they're not racist, whether we're talking about the Amy Coopers of the world, whether we're talking about Donald Trump, who right after he said that majority Black Baltimore is a rat and rodent-infested mess that no human being would want to live in, and he was challenged as being racist. He said, actually, I'm the least racist person anywhere in the world. And so really the heartbeat of racism itself has always been denial. And the sound of that heartbeat has always been, I'm not racist.
Now, I want to walk down this road. He's right and he's wrong. And when he's saying he's right is that people often say, I'm not racist. That's true. And should Donald Trump have said, I'm the least racist person in the world? No, that was pretty dumb, right? Is he racist because he said a thing about Baltimore? No, not at all. He's not racist because he said that. That's it. But is he the least racist person in the world? Stop. I mean, that was typical Donald Trump hyperbole, which wasn't the best move on his part, without question. He wasn't the best piece. But what he's saying is the heartbeat of racism is denial. So if you say you're not racist, that by default makes you racist. Isn't that how the witch trials were? I'm not a witch. Clearly, you're a witch. Why? Because I said I wasn't one. So being accused is all that matters. Once you're accused, you say, I'm not a racist. You are racist. This in itself, it makes people afraid. This goes back to what we talked about days ago. Zero tolerance policy, one strike and you're out.
And so what I'm trying to do with my work is to really get Americans to eliminate the concept of not racist from their vocabulary and realize we're either being racist or anti-racist. We're either expressing ideas.
You are either with me or against me. That's what he just said, right? Let's be clear. You are with me or you are against me.
That suggests certain racial groups are better or worse than others, superior or inferior than others. We're either being racist or we're being anti-racist. We're expressing expressing notions that the racial groups are equals, despite any cultural and ethnic differences. We're either supporting policies that are leading.
Now, let me go walk down this road here. You're either saying that one racial group is better than the other, or you're saying all racial groups are the same. That's what he just said. How about you say nothing? Where does that land? How about you just go live your life? Where is that? I don't know where that is. What about I just live my life and I don't do any of those things? That doesn't exist. You have to be in the fight with him or you are bad. And you might say, but Larry, he's saying you're racist. Yeah, it's bad.
To racial inequities and injustice, like we saw in Louisville, where Breonna Taylor was murdered, or we're supporting policies and pushing policies that are leading to justice and equity for all.
And I would ask what those policies are. Israel just brings up, not quite, Larry. He didn't say saying you're not racist makes you racist. What he explicitly said was that when people are racist, they use deny it. Yes, but then he just now explained there's only two. You are either one or the other. So he was saying that. He just literally said it. You're either one or the other. He said it more than once. There is no such thing as not being a racist. You are either a racist or you're anti-racist. That's where he goes. So I do think he's saying that.
And so I think we should be very clear about whether we're expressing racist ideas, about whether we're expressing supporting racist policies, and admit when we are. Because to be anti-racist is to admit when we expressed a racist idea.
So if you're being anti-racist, You have to admit that you're expressing a racist idea. Okay, I'll buy that. If I don't think I'm a racist, why would I think it's a racist idea? Why would I express, or how would I know I'm expressing a racist idea? This becomes very challenging. The problem with this is now you're asking someone else to be the referee. And guess who wants to be the referee? I think it's him.
It's to say, you know what? When I was doing that in Central Park, I was indeed being racist. But I'm going to change. I'm going to strive.
You can't do that in today's society. We just found that out with the Teen Vogue person. You can't do that. You can't say I was bad and I'll get better, because then the woke mob decides they're going to go back 10 years into your tweets and then tell your bosses they feel bad. And then Burt's Bees is going to say, I don't want to work with you anymore. And you're scarred for life. You get a scarlet letter. We have literally moved 400 years in the past. Oh my God. That's not true. You can't do this with zero tolerance. You can't do this with one strike and you're out, which is why you find people like Donald Trump exaggerate. Immediately go, I'm perfect, I'm wonderful. Because if he does do what you say, admit, he is punished forever. So he can never say he was ever racist ever, because you will crush him forever. Why would he?
To be anti-racist. And to be racist is to constantly deny the racial inequities that pervade American society.
Now, that's a different thing. And here he's right. He's convoluted two things together. He is correct, meaning that you're having a problem. It's wrong if you're saying there are no racial inequities. Of course they exist. It's America. Throughout the world, they exist. Not only in America, but in America, clearly they exist. But there's a difference between saying the system has provided problems and issues and concerns that we have to repair and work on. That to me makes total sense. I do it all the time. Versus saying, oh, because you said or did something, or worse, because you didn't do something, you are now a racist. Different issue. If you're asking me to get behind you and wave that flag and say, change stuff in America, I'm with you. If you're saying grab that flag and then while you're done with it, beat someone over the head with it who has said something wrong, I'm not with you. I'm not with you.
To constantly deny the racist ideas that pervade American minds. And so I want to build a just and equitable society. And the only way we're going to even begin that process is if we admit our racism and start building an anti.
Now, there's the problem. Admit our racism. This is where he's unclear on purpose. This is purposeful. He's a very intelligent man. He's very smart. So he's purposefully vague. Admit our racism. Do you want to admit the racism that has existed in America through systems like the war on drugs, systems like the war on poverty, systems like redlining? Do you want to admit that? I do, and I want to change them. And I think most people, if I spoke about actual policies that have been unfair to people of color, that most people go, yeah, that makes sense. Let's change them. But are you saying my personal racism? Do I have to be sacrificed on the altar? If you sacrifice everyone on the altar, who changes the policies? That's my issue. You will hear me say this often. Bad systems, bad outcomes. We should be very aggressive on changing systems, very aggressive on changing environment, very aggressive on changing policy. Let's be very lenient on human beings. We are flawed. We make errors. All of us do. Let us be very lenient on individuals and instead focus on systems. And if he was saying only that, I'm in. He's not saying that.
The racist world. Thank you.
And yes, by the way, this is an official TED Talk, not a TEDx. It's official TED. And then watch these people. They have to be so somber and calm and somber and respectful.
Thank you so much for that. You know, your book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, has become a bestseller in light of what's been happening. And and you've been speaking a bit to, you know, the ways in which anti-racism and racism are the only two polar opposite ways.
Again, the only two polar opposites. That's it. If you are not anti-racist, you are racist. That is what he's saying. He's admitting it. Be clear.
To hold a view on racism. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about what the basic tenets of anti-racism are for people who aren't as familiar with it in terms of how they can be anti-racist.
Sure. And so I mentioned in my talk that the heartbeat of racism is denial. And really the heartbeat of anti-racism is confession.
Confession.
Is the recognition.
Literally, confess your sins, witch. Confess that you are a win. Confess and be saved. Literally, this is what we are. He is literally starting a witch hunt. His words, you heard them. I didn't make them up.
That to grow up in this society is to literally, at some point in our lives, probably internalize ideas.
Literally, to do it is to literally, probably, see where he's going with those words?
That are racist, ideas that suggest certain racial groups are better or worse than others. And because we believe in racial hierarchy, because Americans have been systematically taught that Black people are more dangerous, he just said systematically taught. And I actually would agree with that. I think if you look at the war on drugs specifically, how it has shown that all the crack is in the hood. You watch the Black guy on Cops get arrested. Gangster rap from the 90s. I think there's some systematic issues there completely. So why wouldn't, again, we then change the system? Black people are more criminal-like. When we live in a society where Black people are 40% of the national incarcerated population,
more stats, no
that's going to seem normal to people. When we live in a society, in a city like Minneapolis, where Black people are 20% of the population, but more than 60% of the people being subjected to police shootings, it's going to seem normal.
Yeah, and that's what most people would say. So why would they believe that they're racist? It's a valid point. They wouldn't. And if you use the word racist, they're going to be upset and angry. Absolutely, they're going to be upset and angry. Who would mean? Nobody wants to feel like they're racist. I don't think anybody wants to feel that, unless you're an actual racist. If you are an actual racist, you're happy to be called a racist. You don't care. You're like, yeah, I'm a racist, whatever. That's fine. But unless you're that person, you don't want to feel that. Isn't that how it works? Oh, excuse me. Sorry, almost sneezed.
And so to be anti-racist is to believe that there's nothing wrong or inferior about Black people or any other racial group. There's nothing dangerous about Black people or any other racial group. And so when we see these racial disparities all around,
his point's a valid one, right? You don't want to believe that any group is a bad group in general, that there are individuals in the group that may be bad. Of course you want to believe that. I'm agreeing with him. That's correct. That party's right.
Around us, we see them as abnormal. And then we start to figure out, okay, what policies are behind so many Black people being killed by police? What policies are behind so many Latinx people being disproportionately?
Oh, did he do Latinx? Oh, man. He did that. But anyway, it's fine. Not that if you like Latinx, it's fine. But he had to say it like with a Latin, like he's Hispanic or something. I hate when non-Hispanic people try to speak with a Hispanic accent. Just say the word, man. It's fine. Anyway, yes, what policies?
Infected with COVID. How can I be a part of the struggle to upend those policies and replace them with more anti-racist policies?
Yeah, what's that policy? The policy is the war on drugs. The policy is the crime bill from '94, run by Democrats. That's the policy. So are you going to bring that up at all?
And so it sounds like you do make that distinction then between not racist and anti-racist. And I guess could you talk a little bit more about that and break that down? What is the difference between the two?
He has already.
In the most simplest way.
Go ahead.
A not racist is a racist who is in denial. And an
look at that. If you're not racist, you're just a racist in denial. Look at you. So you go out and do your own work, whatever you do in your life, racist in denial. Why are you in denial?
Anti-racist is someone who is willing to admit the times in which they're being racist and
Confess
who
your
is willing
sins.
to recognize the inequities and the problems of racial problems of our society, and who is willing to challenge those racial inequities by challenging policy. I'm saying this because
he's brought up policy about 5 times already, but not once war on drugs, not once war on poverty. But he's brought up policy like 5 times already.
Because literally slaveholders, slave traders, imagine that their ideas in our terms were not racist. They would say things like Black people are the cursed descendants of Ham, and they're cursed forever into enslavement. I'm not racist. This is God's law.
So to be clear what he just did, this is gonna matter in the future. What he just did is he linked someone saying, I'm not racist, literally to slaveholders. Did I miss that? He actually linked someone going, I'm not racist. He linked it directly to slave owners. That was what he linked it to. Just to be clear, here we go.
They would say things like, based on science, based on ethnology, based on natural history, Black people by nature are predisposed to slavery and servility.
So he just linked you saying, if you're a person, someone says, you said something racist, you go, I'm not racist. He just linked you directly to a slaveholder who would use the Bible to validate Black people being enslaved.
This is nature's law. I'm not racist. I'm actually doing what nature said I'm supposed to be doing. And so this construct of being not racist and denying one's racism goes all the way back to the origins of this country.
See that? Why would I feel good about me confessing my racism when I confess it? You're linking it directly to me being a slave owner. A direct link. I didn't make this up, guys. This is a TED Talk. This is him talking.
Yeah. And why do you think it has been so hard for some people now to still accept that neutrality is not enough?
Neutrality is not enough. I'm not making this up, guys. Neutrality is not enough. Absolutely.
When it comes to racism.
I think because it takes a lot of work to be anti-racist. It takes, you have to be very vulnerable, right? You have to be willing to admit that you were wrong. You have to be willing to admit that if you have more, if you're white, for instance, and you have more, it may not be because you are more. You have to admit that, yeah, you've worked hard potentially in your life, but you've also had certain advantages which provided you with opportunities that other people did not have.
So how do you think that's going to go across if I want to change these policies? I want to change these policies. And many of the people who are going to help me, my allies in changing these policies, many of them, not all, but many of them are going to be wealthy white people. So I go to you and I say, hey, wealthy white guy, I would like to change the policies. You should admit first, before we do that you're guilty, that you're a racist. And because you have a lot of things, it really wasn't because of you. It's because you were white. You had some advantages. Otherwise, everybody else would be just as powerful as you. So admit that first, then help me change these policies. Maybe it's me. I think that's not going to go over well. Particularly when what you've just said is, if you admit racism, you've linked me directly to slaveholders. Not sure that's going to go over well. Now, if you want to have this kind of academic conversation, 3 PhDs in a classroom in a university, I'm in. Let's have that academic conversation on what is racist and not. I'm fine with that. Let's walk down that road. But if you're telling me you want to tell an average person, oh, by the way, you're white and you have stuff, you don't deserve it. Because that's what you just said. You may go, Larry, I made a nuance you might not have. How in the world do you expect anyone who is white and successful to not be offended by that? Let me go further. How about literally the tens of millions of poor white folk in this country? I know many of them who are not wealthy, middle class, or even lower class who are hurting, low socioeconomic class who are hurting, and now you're going to tell them, wow, you guys look at your privilege while they can't pay their rent? How is that going to go over? It's not. While there are certain things you're saying that are right on the money and true, your methodology is severely flawed, and you should know this is not going to work. It's going to alienate, divide, and just cause more harm.
You have to admit those things, and it's very difficult.
To whom? To you?
For people to be.
Are you my priest? Should I come to you and admit? And the sad part is, look at what these women are sitting there like, yeah, oh my God, yeah, oh my God, yeah. No.
Publicly and even privately self-critical. I think it's also the case of, and I should have probably led with this, how people define racist. And so people tend to define racist as like a fixed category, as an identity.
You literally said you link them directly in a chain to slaveholders. Am I wrong?
This is essential to who a person is. If someone becomes a racist, and so therefore, and then they also connect a racist with a bad, evil person.
You just did? Yes. So let me ask this question. If I could, if you recognize that people are gonna, crazily link racism with a bad person when you just linked it again, literally in front of our eyes, to a slaveholder, why would you call them that? Why would you even attack them that way? Why would you even bring up that language at all? Of course, someone is not going to be happy to be called a racist. Nobody is, except for the racist. The racist is the only one who's okay being called racist. Nobody else is. So why are you doing this?
A racist with a Ku Klux Klansman or woman.
Yes.
They're like, I'm not in the Ku Klux Klan.
Yes.
I'm not a bad person.
Yes.
And I've done good things in my life.
Yes.
I've done good things to people of color.
Yes.
And so therefore, I can't be racist. I'm not
that.
That's not my identity, but that's actually not how we should be defining racist.
Well, then you better change how we define racist in our culture. There is a denotative meaning to racist, which you just admitted is someone who's in a Ku Klux Klan. When you call someone a racist, they assume I'm the guy who's ready to lynch a black guy or kill someone who's Jewish or insert bad thing or bad meme or idea. And then you just now linked it directly to a slaveholder. Man, what's wrong with you?
Racist is a descriptive term.
No, it isn't.
It describes what a person is saying or doing in any given moment.
You guys have heard me discuss this before. The term is a terrible term to use. You shouldn't. I don't. It's terrible. The reality of it is sometimes people are racist. Of course they are. Absolutely. People do. Of course, some people are. Yes. Sometimes things you do might come across as racist, even if not intentional. Okay, then how about we call it instead insensitive? So now we can have a conversation. If I say something that makes them upset, and I have in the past, of course I have, but I would say that was insensitive and I shouldn't have said it, and I would apologize for being insensitive. People will apologize for being insensitive. Why would you apologize for being racist? Why would you ever admit to being racist when literally what he said, people think of it as a member of the KKK or linked to slave owners? Makes no sense whatsoever. If you want people to be better and act better, you have to treat them better. You can't punish them.
And so when a person in one moment is expressing a racist idea, in that moment, they're being racist when they're saying black people are lazy. If in the very next moment, they're appreciating the...
Who is saying that? Like are people are walking around going, you know what black people are? Lazy. Who's saying that? You know who's saying that? Actual racists. They're actually saying it. Who's saying that? Are people walking around saying that?
Cultures of native people, they're being anti-racist.
So
when you're enjoying native peoples, you're being anti-racist.
We're going to get to some questions from our community in a moment, but I think when a lot of people hear this idea that you're putting forward, this idea of anti-racism, there's this feeling that this is something that only concerns the white community. Mm-hmm. And so could you speak a little bit to how the Black community and non-white, other ethnic minorities can participate in and think about this idea of anti-racism?
Sure. So if white Americans commonly say, I'm not racist, people of color commonly say, I can't be racist.
This is true.
I'm a person of color.
Now, he's right on this. This is true. I've heard this before more than once, right? This is an actual problem, particularly in the Black community, right? The idea that I can't be racist, I'm Black. That is a thing. He's right on this. I'm bringing this up, and I'm glad he brings this up. I'm going to give him kudos on this. Well done.
And then some people of color say they can't be racist because they have no power.
Mm-hmm.
And so first and foremost, what I've tried to do in my work is to push back against this idea that people of color have no power. There's nothing more disempowering to.
What? He's saying that people of color. Okay. Okay. I don't even know what to say to this one.
To say or to think as a person of color than to say you have no power. People of color have long utilized the most basic power that every human being has, and that's the power to resist policy, and that's the power to resist racist policies.
How do you resist the war on drugs? You got to help me on this one. How do I, as a person of color, resist when 1984 they send 100,000 cops into Black and brown neighborhoods to roust up people, then don't pay for them after 2 years. So now local communities now have to pay for it. So that, of course, explodes civil asset forfeiture so they can find ways to pay for all these cops they put in the payroll. So how do I resist that? I know the way most people resisted it, by going to prison. Yeah, that didn't work very well. That didn't work well. I don't know what you're talking about. And if Black people have all kind of this power you're talking about, then where's systematic racism? And are you going to touch the idea that anybody could be racist or no?
That's the power to resist a racist society. But if you're a person of color and you believe that people coming here from Honduras and El Salvador are invading this country, you believe that these Latinx immigrants are animals and rapists, then you're certainly not, if you're Black or Asian or Native, going to be a part of the struggle to defend Latinx immigrants, to recognize that Latinx immigrants have much to give to this country as any other group of people.
I'm not even sure where he's going with this one. I guess he's saying that, okay, so I guess what he's saying is Black people can be racist against immigrants. I think that's where he's going. And I think he's going there because he's going back to that power dynamic thing, which he said doesn't exist, but does exist. So he's saying, well, yeah, if you're Black, you'd be racist against, like immigrants and such. That's what he basically said. You could be racist against immigrants. You could be racist against anybody. You could do things that are insensitive against anybody, right? Look, I know plenty of Black people who don't like white people. I do. I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but I do. I know white people who don't like Black people. I serve with many of them in the Marine Corps. I do. Anybody can be racist in that sense. Anybody can be. They can be biased or prejudiced. Of course they can. But I don't know where he's going with this. I guess he's just saying that Black people can only be racist against immigrants because they don't have any power, but Black people have power. I don't know. I'm not sure where this is circular logic somehow.
You're going to view these people as, quote, taking away your jobs. And so therefore you're going to support racist rhetoric. You're going to support racist policies. And
what policies though?
That is probably going to be harming you. In other words, it's going to be harming, if you're Black, immigrants coming from Haiti and Nigeria. If you're Asian, immigrants coming from India. And so I think it's critically important for even people of color to realize they have the power to resist. And when people of color view other people of color as the problem, they're not going to view racism as the problem. And anyone who is not.
Wait a minute. So if I'm prejudiced against, I don't know, Latin immigrants, whatever, I'm sorry, Latinx or whatever you want, Hispanic immigrants, if I'm prejudiced against them, then I'm going to support racist policies and I won't think racism is a problem, even though if I got racism used against me. This is just garbage. What he's just saying now is nothing. He's saying nothing, garbage. At least before he was just wrong. Now he's just spewing garbage.
Viewing racism as the problem is not being anti-racist. And
that's all that matters.
You touched on this a bit in your beginning talk here, but you've talked about how racism is the reason that Black communities and communities of color are systemically disadvantaged in America, which has led to so many more deaths from COVID-19 in those communities. And yet the media is often placing the blame on people of color for their vulnerability to illness. So I'm curious, in line with that,
what media has blamed those communities? That you just made up. That's not true. The media has jumped right on board with him.
What is the relationship between anti-racism and the potential for systemic change?
I think it's a direct relationship.
Okay, help me out with this one.
When you believe,
yeah, you got to think hard on this one. Yeah, you do, because you just threw a bunch of smoke up there, and both of them fell for it, and they're afraid to challenge you, which they shouldn't be. Come on, Black woman, you could hammer him. No one's gonna bother you. You got this, and you're doing nothing. It's fine.
And have consumed racist ideas, you're not going to even believe change is necessary.
Now he's on the money again. I'll give him this one. And this is what usually comes from the right. The right usually just goes, there's no problem. Why have change? No change whatsoever. So if you're unhappy and you want change, you kind of can't go to the right. They're constantly going, nothing's wrong, right? And I think I will do Ben Shapiro tomorrow. But Ben Shapiro is one of those people who just goes, nothing's wrong. Don't do anything. Change nothing. Well, if you're unhappy, that's not an answer for you. This goes back to gun control, guys, just from last night, right? What change nothing. People want change. The right has just don't do nothing. It's perfect. Leave it alone. What's wrong with you? Constitution, be quiet. That's what the right's saying. The left is going, I have an idea. Really bad ones. Tons of really bad ideas that are only going to make things worse. But they're ideas. And this is what's happening now. And people are going, but I want something to happen. And the best example I can give you is 1917 Russia. Yep, I'm going back to 1917 Russia. You got the Russian serfs, basically slaves, not exactly slaves, but very close to slaves for about 300 years. They're oppressed, horrible, no hope, only sporadic violence, no real move to revolt until Lenin comes around. And Lenin says, I got this cool thing. It's called communism. Man, you're going to love it. Like everybody's equal and you'll probably eat. Can't promise you that. But people will be equal. It'd be nice. And they went, oh my God, this communism thing sounds way better than what we have now. And we want change. Let's go do that. And they rushed and implemented communism. And it was just as bad, if not worse. It was terrible. But did the people know any better? No, because it was the only answer they saw. People get mad at me for supporting Gandhi because Gandhi was very much socialist. What other answer did he see? No one else would support him. All the capitalist, countries of the world were behind the British Empire who was crushing him. What else would he see? Ho Chi Minh for being communist. He wanted to be a capitalist, but all the other people were attacking him and crushing him. So of course he went, you know what? The Russians will support me. I guess I'm communist. When people only see one answer and one way out, they tend to take it. The right has no answer for this. Theirs is just no problem. The left has bad answers, which he hasn't even mentioned yet. So I assuming they have some bad answers, but he hasn't even mentioned them yet. It's an important piece. When people want answers, you have to be able to give them some answers. Why did so many people start listening to me? Because I had answers. I had actual policies to fix these things.
Because you're going to believe that racial inequality is normal, or you're not going to believe change is possible. In other words, you're going to believe that the reason why Black people are being killed by police at such high rates, or the reason why Latinx people are being infected at such high rates is because there's something wrong with them and nothing can be changed. And so you wouldn't even begin to even see the need for systemic.
And this is a common issue with too many Black conservatives. Not all. Too many, and the popular Black conservatives follow what he's saying. He's right on this. Why bother? It's all good. It's just a Black man bad. That's the issue. A Latino man bad. That's the problem. Let's just move on. And people don't want to accept that when they're being hurt, right? When you're being hurt, you want an answer. You want something. And too many people aren't giving them anything.
Structural change, let alone be a part of the struggle for systemic structural change. And so to be anti-racist, again, is to recognize that there's only two causes of racial inequity. Either there's something wrong with people, or there's something wrong with power and policy. And
I would buy that.
Realize that there's nothing wrong with any group of people.
I agree.
I keep mentioning groups. You know, I'm not saying individuals. There's certainly Black individuals who didn't take coronavirus seriously, which is one of the reasons why they were infected. But there are white people who didn't take coronavirus seriously. There's no one has ever proven. Actually, studies have shown that Black people were more likely to take the coronavirus seriously than white people. We're not talking about individuals here, and we certainly should not be individualizing groups. We certainly should not be looking at the individual behavior of one Latinx person or one Black person and saying they're representatives of the group. That's a racist idea in and of itself.
So to be clear, what he just said is looking at it one individual, we should ignore that completely, just go to the group, because anything else would be racist.
And so I'm talking about groups. And if you believe the groups are equals, then the only other alternative, the only other explanation to persisting inequity and injustice is power and policy. And to then spend your time transforming and challenging power and policy is to spend your time being anti-racist.
See that? Spending all your time being that's what you should do.
So we have some questions that are coming in from the audience.
These will be great, I'm sure.
First one here is from a community member that asks, when we talk about white privilege, we talk also about the privilege not to have the difficult conversations. Do you feel that's starting to change?
Now, this is a very good question, believe it or not, right? When we talk about white privilege, we talk also about the privilege not to have the difficult conversations. Do you feel that's starting to change? This is a valid question, right? If you're not being affected by this, does that mean you have the privilege of not having to have difficult conversations? I think that's accurate, right? It's true. And the example I'll give is when the crack epidemic and the opiate epidemic back then, it wasn't called opiate, it was called crack epidemic back then, was destroying the Black community. What did the Black community get? Systemic. It got more cops, the crime bill. It got Just Say No from Reagan. It got mandatory minimums from Clinton. So all it got was a bunch of hammering attacks and white people going, see these terrible Black people ruining everything for everybody. That's what happened. But now when the opioid crisis has now hit a lot of white America, now they're having conversations. Now it's an epidemic. Now it's an opioid crisis. This is a valid point. It absolutely is a valid point. So, but I can't stand the use of the phrase white privilege because it always attacks the individual to be less white, which is dumb because the system is what provides anybody with privilege to include sometimes a male privilege, or I'd rather change it. I'd rather call it a female disadvantage, a personal disadvantage, because at least that's okay, right? Someone will hear that. If I were to tell you, if you're a white guy, and I say, in certain instances, being a female is a disadvantage. Most white males will go, yeah, sometimes it's true. They'll have the conversation. Okay, how do we fix that? What could we do? Is that always true? Oh, in this case or in that case, right? And sometimes being a woman is an advantage. Sometimes, most of the time, it's a disadvantage compared to an advantage. But you could say that, and that's a conversation. If I were to tell the average white male, hey, sometimes people of color have disadvantage. Most white males will go, yeah, sometimes it's true. Let's talk about it. How about this case? How about that case? We now have a conversation. But when I start my conversation with, you're white and you have white privilege, where are we going from there? Where are we going from there? So how about we don't use this? How about we stop focusing on being righteous? We stop focusing on that and we instead focus on trying to have real conversations on making things better for everybody.
I hope so. And because I think that white Americans too need to simultaneously recognize their privileges, the privileges that they have accrued as a result of their whiteness.
Now, if you're white and you're listening to this or you're watching this, how does it make you feel? Do you want to talk to this guy? Do you want to have a conversation? And I will go back to the first thing. If I instead had come to you and said, hey, if you're a white guy right now watching this, and I'd come to you and said, hey, you know, sometimes people of color have it tougher. Odds are you'd say, yeah, sometimes it's true. Let's have a conversation about that. And we could have that talk and go back and forth. Do you even want to talk to this guy? That's my problem, right? That's my problem. I'm going to grab a couple of comments right now. I know a lot of them are coming up here. I want to grab a couple of those too, if I can. So let's see if I can grab this real fast. Isn't that the Kafka trap? Yes, absolutely. Yes. Call out racism all you want, but leave with the childish idea that your group can't be racist. Agree too. Yes, absolutely. Yes, 100%. I like your witch trial analogy. Thank you, Tom. I love that. Yes. Christine says that's some twisted thinking. Sadly, common and accepted by the people at TED Talk. So yes, absolutely. Andrew says, someone called me a redneck today while I was on a walk today. And all I could think of is Jeff Foxworthy saying, you might be a redneck if something to go along with it. I laughed it off because the person didn't know who I was. Interesting. Okay. That requires a whole lot of self-awareness. Lyndon, yes. And a lot of people aren't very self-aware. I get that. And I'm not even against it. I don't expect that. What I want is conversations, right? There's no way that if I yell at you and call you names, you're going to see anything differently. But if we have a conversation, you might. And I might learn something too, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I thought you were terrible, Lyndon, the racist guy. And maybe you're not, and you just misunderstood. And if I have a conversation, I go, oh, I was way wrong about you. Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. So I'll just decline to play in their sandbox. Tom, there's only two things, racist, anti-racist. He's been clear. You better pick the right box. Yes. Rob says, Kendi defines a racist idea as any policy he perceives creates an unequal outcome. Ooh, nice one, Rob. Yeah, maybe. But he hasn't talked about any policies yet. He's just said policies for equality or whatever, right? Whatever. Rob's on fire, by the way. He then goes, meritocracy equals racist. Capitalism equals racist. Free speech equals racist. Wow, you hit them all, right? I'm not sure all of that's true, obviously, but I get where you're going. And the problem is, when we talk about what he's going to talk about policies, you're kind of right in how he actually thinks. Speaking of that, I'm happy you brought that up. If you care about free speech, head over to the Censorship and Free Speech Survey. Yes, I'm pumping my sponsors, theadvocates.org. Head on over there, click that link that is in the description. Take that free speech survey. It's like 3 to 5 minutes. Finish it, complete it to the end, and then share it so others see your views on censorship and free speech, where you stand. That's important, and let other people take it also. If you say, Larry, I ain't got time for that, I'm busy. Great. Then throw me some money. Throw me some of your Biden bucks. Head over to patreon.com/Sharpe Way. Throw me $10 a month so I can keep doing this. Right? You see what I'm doing here. If you like what I'm doing, throw me $10 a month. If you got big Biden bucks, throw me $100 a month, $25 a month, whatever you got, it's all good. If you don't have the cash, no worries. You can just like, comment, and share. That works amazingly fine, and it's free. I'd rather, take that survey. Click that link, Censorship and Free Speech Survey. My sponsors, makes them happy, makes me happy, and it's free. Do that, complete it, and share it, and life is good. So thank you for that, guys. I do appreciate that. So Jonathan says, Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Ah, yes. Carrie Buck, eugenics, 120,000 Americans in internment camps. Yeah, those are racist policies. I would agree completely. He doesn't mention those, though. Yeah, he doesn't actually mention any of those. Yes. Joshua says, I've read his book, and he admits that to be anti-racist, you have to support racist policies that support minorities over whites. That's actually a common thought process, right? The way to fix past discrimination is future discrimination. That's the way of doing it. And there's a part of that that's true, right? If you're looking at, giving back what people have lost, righting wrongs, I think a part of that's true. as long as you were to do it for a specific sentence, a specific time. You could do it. I mean, in theory, you could. The question is how you do that, right? That's really the issue. Shelley says, who murdered Breonna Taylor? The judge who issued a no-knock order, or the police who acted on the no-knock warrant, or the cop who got the address wrong? Why don't we find out the answers we have no right to judge? Yeah, admittedly they screwed up, but it was a matter of racism or incompetence. Well, I would say that entire thing came into play because of the war on drugs, Shelley. Without the war on drugs, began under Nixon, expanded under Reagan and Clinton, and then held on over Bush and Obama and Trump, held on over all of them, all of those things. That's the reason why that happened. If there's no war on drugs, then there's no judges issue a no-knock order. The police, it doesn't exist. So I would go into the system on that one. So I hope that was clear at least. So, all right, let me grab a couple more if I can. Keep going, I'm sorry.
And the only way in which they're going to be able to do that is by initiating and having these conversations. But then they also should recognize that yes, they have more. White Americans have more due to racist policy. But the question I think white Americans should be having, particularly when they're having these conversations among themselves, is would we have a more if we had a more equitable society?
Equitable.
Would we have more? Because what I'm asking is that, white Americans have more because of race.
Yeah, white Americans have more. That's true. Accurate statement, 100%. As a group, they do. As a group, they do. But the people who actually have more are the elites in general. The elites have far more. The wealth gap is growing. And if you're in the bottom of that wealth gap, wouldn't you rather, right? I mean, if you're concerned about this, and I am, wouldn't you rather unite the people at the bottom of the wealth gap to make actions to be able to move and close that gap? I feel like that will be the best way of doing it. What I feel is happening now is this type of conversation isn't doing that. This type of conversation is now dividing the people at the bottom by race. I would rather them not do that, right? That's what 1619 was actually all about. That was actually about dividing people, the lower classes, the lower socioeconomic classes, by race. So they fight each other and the elites could win. You're helping them do this now.
Racism. But there are other groups of people in other Western democracies who have more than white Americans. And then you start to ask the question, why is it that people in other countries have free healthcare? Why is it that they have paid family leave?
Whoa. Free healthcare and paid family leave. That's a racist or non-racist policy? Is that an anti-racist policy? Rob, I think you are right.
Why is it that they have a massive safety net? Why is it that we do not? And the answer to one of the major answers to why.
Oh, he said the answer. Then he said, well, let me go back. One of the major answers. What do you think his answer is going to be?
We do not here have is racism.
Of course. Of course. We don't have paid family leave. So he just said, we don't have paid family leave. We don't have universal health care because of free health care because of racism. That's the reason we don't have those two things. Now, he was talking about anti-racist policies. And his policy brought up was health care. He just brought it up. He did health care, right? And paid family leave. What about the war on drugs? But the war on poverty? How does not having family leave or not having health care, how is that racist? How does it affect Black people? Because there's more poor Black people than poor white people by percentage? Okay, I guess you could just make less poor Black people.
Major answers as to why Donald Trump is president of the United States is racism. And so I'm not really asking white Americans to be altruistic in order to be anti-racist. We're really asking people to have intelligent self-interest.
Intelligent self-interest. That is a good term. I may steal that one. Intelligent, good, intelligent self-interest. Okay.
Those 4 million, I should say 5 million poor whites in 1860, whose poverty was the direct result of the riches of a few thousand white slaveholding families.
Yes.
In order to challenge slavery, we weren't saying, we need you to be altruistic. No, we actually need you to do what's in your best, in your self-interest. Those tens of millions of Americans, white Americans, who've lost their jobs as a result of this pandemic. Mm-hmm. We're not asking them to be altruistic. We're asking them to realize that if we had a different type of government with a different set of priorities, then they would be much better off right now.
So the policies that brought up had nothing to do with race. They were just, we should be socialists. So, Rob, you were right. Capitalism equals racism. I didn't know how smart you knew. You must have seen this before. Well done, Rob.
I'm sorry. Don't get me started.
No, I'm not impressed. Please, I'm not impressed. You just said the answer to all this government oppression is more government oppression. But while you're at it, don't stop the war on drugs. Don't stop the war on poverty, even though those are the ones who are devastating everything. It's fine.
We're grateful to you. Thank you.
Why are you grateful?
And in line with that, obviously these protests and this movement have led to some progress, the removal of Confederate monuments, the Minneapolis City Council pledging to dismantle the police department, etc. But
so many successes, removing of Confederate monuments. And I'm going to be very clear on this. How has that helped one Black person? I don't care if you want to remove the monuments, remove them. But it's symbolic, right? I didn't know, they removed the monument. Wow, I just got a raise. That's not what happened. Oh, now my kids are getting educated. Now that monument's gone. Again, if you want to remove them, remove them. I don't have a problem with that. Do what you feel is appropriate. Take the Confederate flag off your flag. Fine. All good. Good for you. Go ahead. How's that success? Right? The things she mentioned were symbolic that actually mean nothing. They make some people feel good, but don't make anything better.
What do you view as the greatest priority on a policy level as this?
All right. Greatest priority here. He talked about policy. Greatest, she calls them. Greatest priority.
Fight for justice continues. I mean, are there any ways that we could learn from other countries?
I don't actually think necessarily there's a singular sort of policy priority.
There's no priority. I can't. This is your chance to destroy the war on drugs right here. This is your chance to dismantle the war on poverty right here. It's a TED Talk. People are going to watch it. Here's your chance to show how the Black man has been crushed. It's not about Black man bad. You've said this. It's not Black man bad. So tell me.
I mean, if someone was to force me to answer, I would probably say two. And that is high quality free healthcare for all.
Free healthcare for all. That'll make all the Black people fine. That's the one. Free healthcare for all.
And so when I say high quality, I'm not just talking about Medicare for all. I'm talking about a simultaneous scenario in which in rural Southwest Georgia, where the people are predominantly Black, and have some of the highest death rates in the country, those counties in Southwest Georgia from COVID, that they would have access to healthcare as high quality as people do in Atlanta and New York City.
So, but Atlanta and New York City are also segregated cities. Well, New York City is segregated completely, and the Black population does poorly here too. That's not going to help. That's not going to help Black people. That helps poor people. I get it. But what about the war on drugs, the war on poverty, or how about something even small? Like, how about changing licensing rules, maybe even zoning, so that people could move into these areas and build things up? Maybe instead change licensing rules so that people could start their own businesses in these small areas. How about that? All of these things could work. What do you think about that? Or maybe even changing how schooling works. Maybe you could do that. Education system. How about that?
And then simultaneously that access, that healthcare would be free. so many Americans, not only, of course, are dying this year of COVID, but also of heart disease and cancer, which are the number one killers before COVID of Americans, and they're disproportionately Black. And so I would say that, and then secondarily, I would say reparations. And
reparations.
Many
at least that one's for Black people. Okay, he did have one that was for Black people. I'll buy that. But in both cases, it was government give stuff. That's his. But at least the second one was actually Black people.
Americans claim that they believe in racial equality. They want to bring about racial equality. Many Americans recognize just how critical economic livelihood is for every person in this country, in this economic system. But then many Americans reject or are not supportive of reparations. And so we have a situation in which white Americans are, last I checked, their median wealth is 10 times the median wealth of Black Americans. And according to a recent study, by 2053, between now, I should say, and 2053, white median wealth is projected to grow. And this was before this current recession. But
white median income is going to grow. That's true. The odds are many incomes will grow. The problem is the wealth gap is still huge, right? And with inflation, great. So now the median income used to be 45,000, now 55,000. But poor people are still making minimum wage while wealthy people are making bazillions. That's a bigger issue than anything. So if we write a check to descendants of slaves, that makes it, now it's good.
And Black median wealth is expected to redline at $0. And that, based on this current recession, that may be pushed up a decade.
Maybe.
And so we not only have a racial wealth gap, but we have a racial wealth gap that's growing. And so for those Americans who claim they are committed to racial equality, who also recognize the importance of economic livelihood, and who also know that...
God, he speaks well, but he doesn't say anything. I mean, he talks and doesn't say anything.
Is inherited in the majority.
Okay, well, what are you talking about? Wealth is inherited. There's a valid point he has, and I want to be clear. There is a valid point. When it comes to inherited wealth, without question, white Americans have a lot more of that. That's true. That's an accurate statement. But again, that goes to the wealthy. Does the average white family have a whole lot of money inherits? No, some do. Like you might get your mom's house. Sure. But then what about home ownership? What if you increased home ownership in the Black? What if you increased the ownership mentality in the Black community? Which, if you remember when I talked about reparations, that's what I talked about. Ownership, 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 ownership. Changing your culture to ownership, in which case wealth becomes transferable. That's what we're trying to achieve. So I don't know where he's going with this, but let me grab a couple more if I could head on down here. Lyndon says, I think some people have a skewed perception of racism. Yes, older people tend not to understand current racism because it's not in your face racism they grew up around. True. The stereotypes, the segregation, the rampant use of language. Now we have systematic racism. Yes, that looks at outcomes and enforcement, which is hard to identify. And that racist in a system isn't systematic racism. It's a system that benefits by targeting a group. Yes, Lyndon, exactly. Thank you for that. Yes, absolutely. This is a system. And the left has no answer to change the system. And the right doesn't even say there's any systemic racism. So they're both incorrect. I just gave you 3 or 4 policies that are systems that you could actually change that would help the Black community, right? There is a system of licensing that's systemic, that without question proportionally affects poor people of color more than others. Guaranteed, right? The war on drugs, without question, affects poor people of color more than others. These are systemic issues, right? Shelley talked about the cops coming in and killing Breonna Taylor. Well, if there wasn't a system of the war on drugs, that doesn't exist. That's systemic racism. Not that the individual cop was a racist. I have no idea if he was. I assume he wasn't, because I don't think most cops are racist. I'm sure they're racist cops. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are. All I'm saying is, I don't think that's why he did it. I think it's because of the system itself. That's systemic racism, a system that is racist, regardless of the individuals in it. So thank you, Lyndon. Perfectly. Well done. I love that. Yes. Oh, we have a panel tonight. This is awesome. Not really. We got one guy just, being mad. Yes. Libertarian beliefs. Yes. Anti-racism starts with respecting others. 100% yes. Well done, Jimmy. And if we would work on the respect piece, period, which one, you know what? Thank you, Jimmy. You've just given me my another show I'm going to do next week. I'm going to do a show on diversity training and how that fails miserably. Thank you, Jimmy. When we do that show, it's on you. That's you. I'll do that next week. So yeah, I agree. It is an issue. So, all right. Latinx is offensive AF. Some people really don't like it. Most, from what I understand, when I've seen most of the surveys on this, most people who are Hispanic or of Latin descent do not like Latinx. They don't like Latinx, or however he says it. They don't like it. Yeah, I agree. So, all right. Oh, Ro does not like that. Oh, F no. Yeah, she's not happy with that. 100%. A lot of people aren't. Absolutely. Shelly says Latinx sounds like something one would use to blow their noses. Ooh, like a Kleenex, a Latinx. There we go. Yes. My Mexican cousins have no issue calling themselves Chicanos. I've known people to call themselves Chicanos. I have heard that before. Yes. The policy is further back than war on drugs and the 94 crime bill. It is welfare. It goes to people without men in the home. That too that's what I mean when I say the war on poverty. Maybe I should be clearer. Thank you for that, Shadforth. I mean, when I say the war on poverty, I mean that. And maybe I should be clearer. In my head, that's obvious, but perhaps in others it isn't. Thank you for that. Yes, that's what I mean by the war on poverty, right? Creating policies that actually allow people or encourage people to not work, that encourage people to not work. Currently, those policies really make a lot of people. If you are a single mom with 2 kids, the system tells you you're dumb to work, right? Like the system is saying, don't you dare work. So a lot of people choose not to work if they're in a situation. That's really what it is. Yes. Lyndon goes, you just lost me on that. Being not racist makes you a racist because you're not anti-racist. What an exclusive club. He must have to think that way. Yeah, absolutely. That's his ivory tower privilege. Yes. Sean, I don't think slave owners claim to be not racist. I think you're right on that one, Sean, but I get his position, right? He's linking it back on purpose. But yeah, I think if you ask the slave owner, are you racist? He'd be like, yeah, I own slaves. Yeah, kinda. And I beat them and I'm mean to them. Yeah, I treat them like animals. Yeah, I'm pretty racist. I think they would say that. Yes. So see if I can keep going. So silence is violence. Now give me a break. What a joke. That's my issue, right? You're saying that if you're not on my side, you're against me. You need allies to make change. Why in the world would you want to do that? Right? Marge says, who doesn't admit racism is wrong? Exactly. The only person who does it is the racist. If you're a racist, you go, yeah, racism is fine. Yeah, absolutely. He's attacking people who don't need to be attacked. He's alienating allies. Oh my God. Christine says, thank God we have wokesters to remind us how bad we are. Yes. Yeah. I feel better about myself now, Christine. I do. Absolutely. So, all right. Let's see if I can keep going. The only legal slavery in our country is inmates. Yes. Kamala Harris broke records turning free men into slaves as per the 13th Amendment. Ouch, Shelley. Look at you go. But sadly, you are correct. Yes. Yeah, it's bad. So, yes. Harlan says, I'm trying to understand how this conversation is going to help. I want to have this conversation with you. His conversation makes things worse. I do this so often because I want you to understand that there is a chunk of Americans who believe this is the answer. And most of the people who believe that this is the answer aren't bad people. They just hear someone who's a professor, who's an author. They see 2 women there who are somber and quiet and respectful and so happy that he was, says some words. They watch it. It's a TED Talk and they go, this must be the thing. and they say, I want to be a good person. This is what they say makes me a good person. I'll do this. Most people who believe this, they're trying to be good people. And I want you to see that too. And I don't want you to be so angry when you meet people who are this way, because most of them watch stuff like this and they now believe it to be true. And then when they say things that are accurate, you can agree, as I did several times. Certain parts he mentions, totally accurate. But then what is the answer? And his answer literally is just socialism. Then all of a sudden, racism goes away. This isn't about race. I wish it was, but that's what it winds up being. So, yes. Paula says, Larry, you need to be on this panel. Yeah, it'd be nice, I guess, but they don't want to talk to me. I love that. Even Wu-Tang Clan says they are not big on bigotry in one of their songs. Logic is half white and half black and celebrates it. That's right, yeah. In the raps about being proud of who you are no matter what race. I love that, yes. Shadforth, white conservative here. I love Larry's reparation proposal of property tax exemption. Ibram X would hate it because it doesn't bring down America, and it would take money out of the hands of Dems. He supports Democrats completely. You're right. That's all he talks about. Voting Democrat is what he wants to do. Absolutely. Yes. It's doublespeak. Yes, it is. Absolutely. I'm convinced this guy is in it for the grift. I thought that too. I did. I wasn't sure. But when I hear him speak, I feel like he might be a believer of his own garbage. And grifters tend to not believe their own garbage. So I'm unsure on this one. You might be right. I'm unsure though. I'm kind of on the fence here. Just like the white fragility fraud. Oh yeah, she's a complete and total fraud. She's a total grifter. She's a disaster. Yes. Who gets paid thousands of dollars to admit she's racist? How is that not white supremacy? 100%. Yeah, I've actually forgotten her name. She's terrible. She's the one who did the Coca-Cola training. She's just a bad person. I don't know if he's a grifter or not, to be forward. I don't know him well enough. He might be, but he also might believe it. There are a lot of people who think there's no other answer except this. Yes. John says, Kendo uses a lot of words, but says absolutely nothing. Yes, he doesn't really say stuff. Yes, he doesn't. Yeah, I agree completely. And for the record, my father witnessed clan crosses at least twice being burnt in his yard because my Cherokee grandfather sharecroppers with black people. Look at that. There we go. Look at that. So let's fine. Keep going here. There you go. Only white people can be racist. Knew that was coming. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. These academic arguments don't help in racism. You know, they could, Paula, if they're kept in the ivory tower, right? If they're kept there and people talk about it and then come up with the right messaging and the right policies, they can be, right? The idea that you want to think about something on a macro level is important. But when you come out, you can't take that same message and put it out there. You just can't, right? And this is where they're failing. And this is where most coaches and trainers fail, which I'll cover now because, you know, he said that. I'm gonna cover because what Jimmy said. I'm going to cover that in training later on next week. I'll cover that next week. So yeah, absolutely. Or maybe this week, maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday. I'll see, but I will cover it. Absolutely. So how's academic? The phraseology he's using and the concepts he's using, he's changing definitions to have connotative meaning. I'm sorry, to have denotative meaning versus connotative meaning, right? Denotative meaning means what the word actually means literally and how you change and adjust definition. Connotative means how it feels, right? How it feels. And if you have a conversation about, okay, how do I define this and define that and define this, and then I change it based upon that, that's the academic part she's talking about. So I hope that was clear. All right, so if I can keep going here. A mindset that needs power to be considered what it is. Not sure I went where that one goes. Yes. Civil disobedience keeps using drugs as a form of protest. See that, Lyndon? Because you care. You're with us in the struggle, man. You are absolutely about that. David says, what about light-skinned African-Americans versus dark-skinned African-Americans and the brown paper bag clubs? I agree. I'm light-skinned. I get that all the time. The woman, if you see to her right, to the right there, she's light-skinned also. That's an issue in the black community. It absolutely is. It totally is. People talk about the color of your skin. That is a thing also. I try my best to not be that way, but it does happen to me sometimes too. Yes. Lupe says, I love how Larry's breaking this down. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. Brian says he's using the word soup method of speaking. You just string words together and then others interpret them. Yeah. And you also go back and forth to different ones. Absolutely. So he says, does anyone know if he's ever had a discussion with anyone that challenges his ideas? It seems he only speaks to people that have the same twisted view. It's very easy to do in today's world. Very easy. Absolutely. It's very easy. 100%. So, all right. If you're not for open borders, you are a racist, but only if you're black or brown. That's it. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. He's trying to equate being against legal immigration to being racist. Yes. I think he did it. I think he did it. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So Larry, we're all green in the Marine Corps. Yes. I remember that saying. Oh, Cliff, look at you bringing that back. Yes. We're all green. That's what we used to say in the Marine Corps all the time. We're all green. We're not black. We're not white. We're green. I remember that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me grab a couple more if I can. Let me keep going a little bit longer.
Majority of wealth is inherited. And when you think of
the majority of wealth is inherited, that's what he says. He just insults anybody who makes it. And statistically, that's incorrect. That actually is incorrect. That is not true, what he just said. It's absolutely not true.
The inheritance, you're thinking of past and the past policies that many Americans consider to be racist, whether it's slavery or even redlining. How would we?
Oh, he brought up redlining at least. Okay. Okay, that's something. Oh, that's a good one. Brought up one. Okay.
Even begin to close this growing racial wealth gap without a massive program like reparations?
Well, sort of connected to this idea of thinking about wealth disparity and wealth inequality in this country, we have a question from community member Dana Pearls. She asks, how do you suggest liberal white organizations effectively address problems of racism within the work environment, particularly in environments where people remain silent in the face of racism or make token statements without looking internally?
So she's from Berkeley. Surprise. How do you suggest liberal white organizations? I guess that's a thing. I didn't realize that was, but I guess it is. Effectively address problems of racism within a work environment. If you're liberal, that shouldn't be a problem. And this is the point that I bring up all the time. Well, Larry, you must be a racist. You must be bad. If you think I am, and many of you might think that's fine, whatever you want, you can just go to, I think it was called State and Country. When I ran my campaign, this organization, it's like a magazine. No, it's a news outlet. They surveyed all of the gubernatorial campaign teams. There were 5 people running for governor in 2018. I was one of the 5. I had, they said, I had the most diverse staff. I don't have quota systems. I never have, never will, never do. And they said I had the most diverse staff. So how do you suggest liberal white organizations affect this? I don't know. Hire better. Hire the right people. You could stop just deciding that you're going to be liberal and white. You could just be an organization. You could just be an organization and not be a liberal white organization. That could be one thing. I mean, the media constantly called me when I ran African-American businessman, African-American libertarian. I got that constantly, but I didn't run an African-American campaign. I ran a libertarian campaign. You could just be an organization. I would say that, particularly in environments where people either remain silent in the face of racism or make token statements without looking internally. That's what you're encouraging with what's happening here.
Sure. And so I would make a few suggestions. One,
enlighten us.
For several decades now, every workplace has.
Here comes the history lesson. She asked the question. I have an idea. I'm going to give you the answer, Dana. I'm going to give you the answer. Stop being a liberal white organization. Just be an organization. That's the number one thing you should do off the bat. Just do that. And then stop calling out racism. Try to fix it. Look at yourself and say, if my organization is all white, and that's what it is, ask yourself, is that because the only people in this country that we could hire were white, they were the best people, or did we look in the wrong places? I'm very serious. Did you look in the wrong places? Were there people of color that could have done the job just as well or better, and you didn't find them because you were looking in the wrong places? If you do that, then take action. And when you're hiring, look in those places, and you'll probably find other people who aren't white liberals to join your organization. The problem is if you only look in a certain area, you only get a certain group of people. Change where you're looking. I can't find any tigers here. Well, because you're hunting in the mountains and the tigers are in the jungle. So go hunt in the jungle and you'll catch a tiger. It pretty much is that simple, to be forward with you. But second, are you letting people know that you are looking for people of color? Just tell people that. Literally say that. We're a white organization. I don't want to be that. I'd like to be a bit more diverse. Anyone, knows someone who do this job? How about talking to us about it? Let's do that. How about you look for some contractors who might be people of color? Just look for them. It doesn't mean you're only going to hire them. I'm not saying quota system. Just open yourself up. And you know what will wind up happening? If you actually are the liberal that you say you are, if you actually are, and you look in the right places, you will by default come up with people of color and women and people who are gay. You will come up with that if you look in the right places. How do I know? I did. I'm the proof.
Publicly pledged a commitment to diversity.
Publicly pledge a commitment to diversity. Literally a token statement. She said, don't do that. And he said, make a token statement.
Typically, they have diversity statements. I would basically rip up those diversity statements and write a new statement. And that's a statement committed to anti-racism. And
that's not token. I'm be committed to anti-racism. I would change the words on your current token statement and change them to my words on your token statement. Way better.
In that statement, you would clearly define what a racist idea is, what an anti-racist idea is, what a racist policy is, and what an anti-racist policy is.
What a colossal waste of time. If anybody's watching this and you own a business, please don't do this. Colossal waste of time.
And you would state as a workplace that you're committed to having a culture of anti-racist ideas.
He just said nothing.
A culture, having an institution made up of anti-racist policies.
And he hasn't explained what a policy is. The only policy you said is reparations and healthcare. So I guess what you should do then, Dana, is give everybody free healthcare, because that's policy number one. Policy number two, give all your black employees extra cash. Done. Anti-racist, done.
And so then everybody can measure everyone's ideas and the policy.
So then when you create your secret state police and everyone's reporting on each other on whether they had the right speak, literally, he just said this, so we can measure our speak to make sure that our speak is the appropriate state speak.
Policies of that workplace based on that document.
There we go.
And I think that could begin the process of transformation.
No,
I also think it's
hunt someplace else. I gave you the answer, Dana. Ignore him. Hunt in places where you can find women, people of color, people who are different genders. Go hunt there and you'll find them.
Critically important for workplaces to not only sort of diversify their staff, but diversify their upper administration.
You see him laugh? Yeah. Jonathan's exactly right. Don't change the makeup of your organization. Just say something about it and possibly do nothing. See, I've said the right stuff. I love this. Yes. Kenny's ideas are absolutely detrimental to this country and to freedom anywhere. Yes, Nick, you are correct. Absolutely. I don't think diversity in business equals success, which is why it shouldn't be enforced by government. That does not incentivize people of color to be more successful because they know they have to be hired or accepted by a university based upon the color of their skin. Diversity, let me be clear, John, if you actually have the goal, and the goal should be, and I discussed this actually with Laban King a couple of weeks ago, if you remember that episode, the idea of diversity of thought is what's critical. Now, does that often mean different races or genders? It often means that, but it's not required, right? If I get a white guy and a black guy, both in the Northeast, both went to, Ivy League school, both studied economics, and they come in, I'm not getting diversity of thought. I'm getting diversity. That's true. Not diversity of thought. I'd rather have the black guy who went to Harvard and then the black guy who, went to community college out of Philly. Now I got diversity of thought, right? I want diversity of thought with unity of purpose, right? Unity of purpose with diversity of thought is the key. That doesn't mean you'll be successful. You're right. But it does mean you'll probably have an advantage. You still may fail. Business is tough and you may still fail. But if you can get that, that's the goal. That is absolutely the goal. Yes. Paula says, I'm the whitest person in America and I try to use minority-owned businesses. Yes. Take action. Don't write pieces of paper. Take some action. Small minority-owned businesses will tend to work really hard to keep your business. It's a small way you can help the Black community and small business owners. I completely agree. Yes. Change your actions. Do something that you think might help if you think it's valuable, right? But to John's point, I don't want us forced to do that. We should see value in that. We should want to do that. And if someone asked me that question and I would say, are you doing it because you want diversity or are you doing it because you want to do the right thing and you feel that you want to do your best to help, racism. And if you go, no, it's because it's a feel good. I want to help racism. Awesome. Then, pick a couple of Black businesses and support them. Well done. Your policy changed. That's what you wanted. If you're saying, no, I just want diversity because I think it's better for my business. Awesome. Change where you hunt. And that will change. Change what, vendors you use. And there we go. Either way, it can work. Absolutely. So, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Oprah Winfrey, and others are richer than the Queen of England. Most wealth is not inherited. Thank you, Sam. He's literally wrong on that one. Many of the facts he's used are actual facts. That one's a blatantly provable, demonstrably incorrect. Most wealth is not inherited, and that hasn't been true in probably over 200 or 300 years. I mean, if you go back hundreds of years ago, that was true, right? Back in the day where the Queen of England was the way you made money, right? But that hasn't been true in decades. I'm sorry, hundreds of years. Absolutely true. That's absolutely just incorrect. Just incorrect. So what I would ask Kendi, what have you done to help the Black community? Well, he does the hard work of writing books and saying stuff and getting paid to help people write useless words and that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I absolutely agree with your assessment of diversity. Thank you, John. Yes, that's the issue, right? Where do you want to go with that, right? It will give you an advantage, but it's you're not guaranteed success. Even with diversity of thought, it's not a guarantee, but yeah. Susan says, off the cuff response, healthcare stinks at any price point. A lot of room for improvement. This is true. I'd rather fix that entire system. I agree. Yes, absolutely. So, Royal says, we should take money from people that had nothing to do with slavery to pay reparations. That's wrong, in my opinion. I get it. It's a big problem, right? Paula says, you have policies. He doesn't. Yeah. I'm kind of waiting for the women to speak. They're there just to ask him questions. That's it. Yes, absolutely. So let me keep going a little bit more.
And I think that's absolutely critical as well.
So all he said, to be clear, all he said was that token statement, remake a token statement. He gave her no actual way of doing it. He actually has no policies. He just wants people to say, I'm so sorry that I'm a racist. And then he wins.
We have some more questions coming in from the audience. We have one from Melissa Mahoney, who's asking, Donald Trump seems to be making supporting Black Lives Matter a partisan issue, for example, making fun of Mitt Romney for participating in a peaceful protest. How do we uncouple this to make it nonpartisan?
You better think hard on this one, brother. You better think hard on this one. You just double down on this. When they asked you, what are the issues? You didn't say, end professional licensing so poor Black and brown people can start their own businesses. They don't have to sit at Home Depot and wait for someone to drive by and pick them up. They can begin their own businesses, right? End this mass incarceration, take cannabis off Schedule I, end the war on drugs, end the war on poverty, stop encouraging, poor Black women to stay home and not work. Stop these policies. Didn't say any of that. So what he said was universal health care free, reparations. How do you not make that partisan? I don't know how you do that.
Well, I mean, I think that to say the lives of Black people is a democratic declaration is simultaneously stating that Republicans do not value Black life.
So here's how you make it nonpartisan: by attacking Republicans and make it deeper, partisan. Yeah. Wow. Wow. What can I say? Why did I even ask a question? Melissa, why'd you bother?
And so, I mean, because if that's essentially what Donald Trump is saying, if he's stating,
okay, Donald Trump's not president anymore, so now is racism over? He's not president anymore.
There's a problem with marching for Black lives, then what is the solution? The solution is not marching. What's the other alternative?
Oh, so everything is, look at him smiling. Yeah, he's right. So you either you march for Black Lives Matter or you hate Black people. That's what he just said. Am I making this up, guys? Did I go too far? I feel like he laughed. You don't march for BLM? Clearly you don't care about Black lives at all. And they're smiling and laughing, not going, what are you saying? What's wrong with you?
The other alternative is not marching for Black lives. The other alternative is not caring when Black people die of police violence or COVID. And
so I want to be clear. Every one of you, if you're watching this and you didn't march for BLM, you hate Black people. That's a good message. That'll make it nonpartisan. Well done, man. You got this covered. You got this covered.
And so to me, if the way in which we make this a nonpartisan issue is to strike back or argue back,
is to fight. That's how you do it. You want to make it nonpartisan? Attack Republicans. That'll work. Totally work. Argue with them. Works every time. Man, you are brilliant, man. I got to buy your book.
In that way. And obviously Republicans are going to claim they're not saying that, but it's a very simple thing. Either you believe Black Lives Matter or you don't. And if you believe Black Lives Matter because you believe in human rights, and you believe in the human right for Black people and all people to live and to not have to fear police violence and not have to fear the state and not have to fear that a peaceful protest is going to be broken up because some politician wants to get a campaign op, then you're going to institute policy that shows it, or you're not.
That answered her question perfectly. Melissa, say that. Republicans will love you. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Well done. This guy's great.
So I want to ask a question that just about how people can think about anti-racism and how they can actually bring this into their lives. I imagine that a lot of folks they hear this and they're like, oh, I have to be really thoughtful about how my actions and my words are perceived. What is the perceived intention behind what it is that I'm saying?
So what I want you to do is to make sure you go out of your way to walk on eggshells.
And that may feel exhausting. And I think that connects even to this idea of policy. And so I'm curious, there is a huge element of thoughtfulness that comes along with this work of being anti-racist. And, what is your reaction and response to those who feel concerned about the mental exhaustion from having to constantly think about how your actions may hurt or harm others?
So I think part of the concern that people have about mental exhaustion is this idea that they don't ever want to make a mistake.
Yes.
And I think to be.
And I think that young lady from last week, I think she's a good example of that. Yes.
The anti-racist is to make mistakes, and is to recognize when we make a mistake. For us, it's what's critical is to have those very clear definitions so that we can assess our words. We can assess our deeds.
Our
and
words.
When we make a mistake, we just own up to it and say, you know what, that was a racist idea. You know what, I was supporting a racist policy, but I'm going to change. The other thing I think is important for us to realize is in many ways, we are addicted. And when I say we, individuals and certainly this country is addicted to racism.
We're addicted to racism.
And that's one of the reasons why.
I was like, gotta get me some racism. I haven't had any. It's been like 4 hours. I need some racism. I've seen addicts, my friend. I've never seen a racist addict, but all right, we're addicted to it. Need me some. Haven't had any racism. Like, actually, you've given me a lot in the last hour. So actually, I've had my fill. I'm actually racismed up. You have hooked me up. You are now my dealer, I guess. So we're good.
For so many people, they're just in denial. People are usually deny their addictions. But then once we realize that we have this addiction, everyone who has been addicted, you talk to, friends.
Okay, now I've changed my mind. He's a grifter. I wasn't sure. I was like, is he? Does he? He can't believe this. So yeah, he's a grifter. I thought maybe he believed this and he wasn't the grifter. Nope, grifter. I stand corrected. You guys were right. He's a grifter. I apologize. I take it back.
Friends and family members who are overcoming an addiction to substance abuse.
Yeah, I know.
They're not going to say that they're just healed, that they don't have to think about this regularly. That, someone who is overcoming alcoholism is going to say, you know what, this is a day-by-day process.
So America needs to have a day-by-day thought process on how racist they are and to move forward like they're an addict. I would like, maybe it's me, I would like to be able to work, service my clients, pay my bills, do things that I enjoy my life, support my daughters and my wife. That's what I would like to do. That sucks up a whole lot of my time, like a lot. And I would bet that if you're watching this or listening to this, that you do those types of things to help people that you care about, your family, your friends, your own life, all those things. And I get you don't want to be racist. I don't either. I know you guys don't want to. You wouldn't watch this show if you wanted to be racist. Right? You'd be on a different channel. You wouldn't be here if you wanted to be racist. Of course you don't want to be racist. But why do I have to make it a part of my life for the next 30 years? How about just doing my best to not be racist, which I think we all should try. And when we say something that might be racist, or we do that might be racist, if we have someone bring it up and go, hey, that was kind of insensitive, and have a conversation about it, then people tend to be okay with it because we don't want to be racist. And I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story from my past. And I don't often tell these stories, but I will because I think it matters. This was a buddy of mine when I was a kid, probably 13 years old. I just moved out to Long Island from the city, and I was making a shift in friends. Most of my friends when I was in elementary school were Black. Almost all were. Some were Hispanic, but almost all were Black. I grew up in a Black community in the Bronx when I was a young kid. But as I got out into my teenage years, I moved to Long Island, and most of my friends became white. So it was a big culture shift for me, right? A massive culture shift for me in that regard. And not only was it Black to white, it was also urban to suburban. So it was a big shift for me. So me and my friend do something stupid on the street. I don't want to tell you what we were doing, but it was something dumb. And as we're doing dumb stuff on the street, because I was a knucklehead as a teenager, as most of us were, a guy drives by and sees us doing dumb stuff, and he's Black. He looks by and gives us a look. And my friend who was white, he says, what you looking at, N-word? He's 13 years old. I'm 13, 12, maybe 13, in that area. He says it, and then immediately looks right at me, immediately, and goes, oh. And what he says to me is this. I still remember this. He says, I'm sorry, that's just how we talked. That's what he said. And I said, all right, moved on. We're still friends to this day. This is what a conversation is about. We talked about that later. Just two 13-year-old kids talking trash about it. He didn't do it because he was trying to hurt me. He did it because we were stupid teenagers, and he was trying to be big tough guy to some guy, and he thought being mean was to do a racial slur, that would be mean to him. And his friends and his family prior to me, that's how they spoke. He had bad habits to break. This is probably 1980, so it's 40 years ago. This is 40 years ago. And people were changing. This is not easy. But did I want him to now start walking on eggshells every time he's around me? He wouldn't be my friend if he had to do that. He wouldn't hang around me. I wouldn't have any friends. Why would he want to be around me? He had bad habits, but I'm telling you, he began to break those bad habits as he hung around me. Not because he was like, I got to walk on eggshells. He was like, I don't want to make Larry mad, so I shouldn't do that. So he stopped doing it. This is where we have to deal with. This is how, when I saw myself move from predominantly black to predominantly white, how I try to deal with these issues in my life. It's kind of why I am the way I am today. I want things to be better. I don't want to be righteous.
And I take it day by day and moment by moment. And I'm actually, yes, it's difficult.
She literally said, you know, how do we deal with this kind of, you know, mental, you know, exhaustion? He said, be exhausted. That's not an answer, man. I'm giving you an actual answer. When many of us say things that are insensitive or wrong or bad habits or things we've grown up with, when this happens, acknowledge it, like he said, and go, wow, you know what? I shouldn't have said that. And if you're the one receiving it, if you're receiving a misogynist comment, if you're receiving a racist comment, if you're receiving that, think about what the actual intent was. Was that person trying to be racist or misogynistic? Or were they trying to be super cool or bad habits or I'm just mad? What was the intent? And if you can discern the intent and see how they want to have a conversation about it, talk about it. And don't talk about how bad they are. Talk about how it made you feel. That's the most important thing. Don't talk about how bad the individual is. They don't want to be called bad. But tell them how it made you feel when they called you a girl in the office or when they used the racial slur in front of you that you are. Tell them how it made you feel. And if they care about you at all, and I hope they do, they'll say, whoa, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. And you have the conversation and we all get better. And we all get better.
To restrain myself from reverting back to what I'm addicted to, but at the same time, it's liberating. It's freeing. Because I'm no longer having to wallow in that addiction. And so I
just confess your sins.
I'm no longer having to hurt people due to my addiction. And I think that's critical. You know, I think we spend too much time thinking about how we feel and less time thinking about how our actions and ideas make others feel. And I think that's one thing.
Okay. That part I agree with. He's right. Shot me for a second. He's right. I think all of us, and this is me, him, you, everybody, we should all spend more time thinking about how other people feel. That's accurate. And I think that sounds good. I love how that sounds. I'm in with that one. We should. All of us should. Shouldn't be mandated by law. I'm telling you what we should. We should be thinking about that. He's right. See, I'm going to give him some credit. That's a good one.
George Floyd video forced Americans to do was to really see and hear, especially, how someone feels as a result of their racism.
Or how someone feels as a result of someone's words or actions. You don't have to use the racism word. It's not required. It's a righteous word that makes you feel good and the other person feel terrible. You could just say, as a result of what you said or how I took it. You take the onus on yourself. And people get mad when I say this. People get mad when I say this. When I say when someone says something that hurts you, you can take the burden on yourself and say, I was hurt by this. Not you made me feel or you hurt me. And if you take that burden on yourself, the person is more open to have a conversation about it. Now, the pushback I get is, well, now you're blaming the victim. I'm the victim. I can blame myself if I want to. I'm not blaming the other person. I'm saying you can say, I felt bad. I'm bothered. I'm hurt by this. Here's how I took it. And if you take the burden on yourself, yes, self-victim blaming, I guess, if you want to call it that, up to you. You can call it that if you want to. But if you do that, you have a chance of actually making a relationship with that person. If you don't want a relationship, you just hate them, blame them. Works well. You're a racist. They'll hate you. You'll hate them. Life is good. But if you want a relationship, take the burden yourself. You'd be amazed how often people will say, oh my God, I didn't mean it. How can I have a conversation? But if they really are racist, you know what they say? Stupid you people, blah, blah, blah. All right. That person's an actual racist. You found them. The actual racist will always out themselves. Guaranteed. They will always out themselves. there's actually in America very few racists. They exist. They absolutely exist. There's actually very few. Most people actually don't care. Most actually don't care. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. But if you want to have a conversation with them, you can move the needle even more.
We have another question from the audience. This one is asking about, can you speak to the intersectionality between the work of anti-racism, feminism, and gay rights? How does the work of anti-racism relate and affect the work for these other human rights issues?
This is going to be a disaster.
Sure. So when I define a racist idea as any idea that suggests a racial group is superior or inferior to another racial group.
Any idea. So the way you fix that is by healthcare, literally. That's what he said. I'm not making that up. That's what he actually said.
Way. And I use the term racial group as opposed to race because every race is a collection of racialized intersectional groups. And so
I'm going to go past this. This is going to be a bunch of talk that means nothing. This talk means nothing. So let me just go past
queer
it
people as being
to see if I can find something.
hypersexual than heterosexuals. And so Black queer people have been tagged as more hypersexual than.
He doesn't answer the question at all. He just moves on and he just, it's what he does. He doesn't actually answer the question at all. He just gives more of a history lesson. So I'm going to move past this one.
Mohit in our community who asks, how do you see cancel culture and anti-racism interacting? For
Aha!
example, when someone did something obviously racist in the past and it comes to light.
This has just happened. This just happened.
How do we respond to
wow.
that?
This is all about free speech, right? This is literally about free speech. So what am I going to ask you to do? Go take your censorship and free speech survey. Yes, I am. I'm going to ask you to do that right now. Click that link. Take that if you would. Make my sponsors happy, theadvocates.org. It's free. Do that right now. Take it, finish it, and then share it. Click that specific link. It's in the description. If you would, I appreciate that. Take care of that and take that that survey for me and share it around. Finish it and share it. Always like, comment, and share. And if you've got the cash, you like what I'm doing, throw me some cash. Patreon.com/SharpeWay. $10, $25. Let me keep doing this. If you like it, please keep doing it. I hope you like it.
So I think it's very, very complex. I do obviously encourage people to transform themselves, to change, to admit those times in which
confess
they were being racist.
Yep.
And so obviously we as a community have to give people that ability to do that, you know.
But we don't, do we? Right? But we don't. But you're right, we should.
When someone admits that they were being racist, we can't immediately obviously cancel them. But I also think that there are people who do something so egregious, and there are people who are so unwilling to recognize.
Okay, this is garbage. I have to go past this because in reality, he's talking trash. Cancel culture is destroying any chance of us to regroup at all. Let me just grab through this. Let me just go through some more of these if I can. Being a good person isn't based on what people say you should do. Only you as an individual know if you're really a good person. Good people do good things when no one's looking, not to be recognized. John, correct? Absolutely. Adrian says, the entire Arabic world is waiting for America to decide if they are white. New debate due to Colorado shooter. Yes, because they're trying to make that about race. They're trying to force these last two shootings to be about race when neither is about race. Neither of the last two shootings are about race at all. It's not. It just isn't. They would like them to do it, but it just isn't that. So, sorry. Yes. Yes, Robin DiAngelo, thank you. She's the white fragility writer, and she's a terrible person, just bad in general. Yes. So Paula says he's promoting socialism while ignoring the genocides committed by socialist communists. Yes. The problem with government, more government. Onofre says, Larry, you are the man, even as a Canadian. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, absolutely. So wait, is the panel done? They're frozen. No. I'm keep doing. I keep going. Yes, absolutely. Julie says, I was brought up not to be racist and accept everyone for who they are and their morals. Well, when I got into high school, the blacks had a door whites weren't supposed to use. Oh, I was late with a friend and just used it. We were called all kinds of names and had 4 or 5 of them come after us to beat us up until we decided right there that we weren't going to fight back. Then we took off our jackets. Oh, weren't going to not fight back. We have our jackets, and they cooled it and let us go. I don't care what you look like, and I don't know the rest of that. But Julie, yeah, my entire point is anyone can be racist, anyone can be biased, anyone can be insensitive. No group of people has, a monopoly on sainthood or sinner or being a sinner. Neither of them do, right? There's bad people in everything and good people in everything. I completely agree. Everyone can be racist. And those jerks were obviously racist, but they were probably kids. I mean, to just be forward, it's what I talked about with the woman from last week. Is it Alexia, I think was her name? She was 17 saying stupid stuff. Teenagers say stupid stuff and do stupid things. And they just want to join a group. And if that group happens to be racial, they'll join it. And if it's not racial, they'll join it. They might be a part of the jock group or the nerd group or the black group or the Hispanic group or the white group or whatever. People move to, particularly teenagers, they move to groups to feel powerful and strong, to create social groups. So, yeah. So, absolutely. Let's see if I can grab a couple more of these. I love the intellectual thought process. This is the way I think. I think New York needs this guy as governor. Thank you. And not president of the United States. I appreciate that. Yes, absolutely. Double speak on top of double speak. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Larry, what resources would you recommend for people that are new to libertarianism? The book I always talk about is my favorite one when it comes to libertarian thought is Bastiat's The Law. It's called The Law by Bastiat. It's short. It's a short book. You can read in a couple days, knock it out. It's about, I think, 1830s or 1840s, I think, France, and how the government functions there. And you can see direct parallels with the government now. That is my favorite one. It's relatively simple to read, short. It gets people in the mood. And once you have that in your Amazon, the rest will pop up. That's the one I like. If you're in business, the book to read for business is To Be or Not to Be Intimidated by Robert Ringer. Robert Ringer is an objectivist. However, he has heavy libertarian leanings, and many parts of objectivism fall into libertarianism. So for business, I would do something by Robert Ringer. He had 3 books he wrote. That's the one I would recommend for the starter. And Bastiat's The Law. I hope that was clear. So for fun, maybe reason.com. That they're funnier, more interesting. Maybe that could be one. So yes. So AJ says, I was brought up to respect everyone regardless of who and what they are and to stick up to bullying. Me too. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Julie says, I tried to click on that link for the survey and it wouldn't work. Just open this window. What did I do wrong? You have to go to the description and click it and it should go there. Yes, absolutely. You should go to the description and click that one. It would work well. Yes. Larry responds, wish you'd be invited to these things. I do. Yes. I would love to do that. I absolutely would be doing that. If I could, I would do it. Yes. So let me grab a couple. Let me move a little bit further forward in this so we can wrap this up, because he does say some other things that, some of you, your heads will explode, but some of you, they won't. Let me grab a couple more if I can. Honky, thank you. That's actually funny. I do appreciate that. Does anyone actually use that word anymore? Anyway, Jonathan, I'm sorry. Yes.
And people are calling for this. And that is always the beginning. The beginning is what we're experiencing now.
I think that this next audience question follows well from that, which is, what gives you hope right now?
Uh-oh, gives you hope.
So certainly resistance to racism has always given me hope. And so
that's his issue.
Let's say 6 months ago, we were not in a time which almost every night, all over this country, people were demonstrating against racism. But I could just look to history when people were resisting. And so resistance always brings me hope, because
resistance doesn't, you're not doing anything. right? All you're saying is vote for Democrats. That's what he says, by the way. I pull a bunch out because all he says is socialism, vote for Democrats, socialism, vote for Democrats. Trump bad. That's his whole thing. So he's not resisting. He's just trying to get Joe Biden, and this is last year. He just wanted Joe Biden to be president. Okay, Joe Biden's president. Did we win? I didn't see a win, but maybe we won.
There's always resistance that and it's, of course, it's stormy, but the rainbow is typically on the other side. But I also receive hope philosophically, because I know that in order to bring about change, we have to believe in change. There's just no way a change maker can be cynical. It's impossible. So I know I have to believe in change in order to bring it about.
You mean positive change?
I mean, and we have another question here.
He didn't answer that either. You answered. You're a disaster.
Some of the things you talked about before in terms of the structural change that we need to bring about. From Miriam, in terms of putting into practice the transformative policies.
See that?
Is then the most important thing to loudly vote the right people into office at every level to make those structural changes happen.
So I think that is part of it.
Part of it. Okay. What am I missing?
We should vote into office people who, from school boards to the president of the United States, people who are committed to instituting anti-racist policies that lead to equity and justice. And I think that's critically important.
So again, he's concerned about policies that enforce justice. And then when asked, he said, I don't really know exactly. Universal health care that's free. That's the one.
I don't think that we should think that that's the only thing we should be focused on, or the only thing that we should be doing.
Okay.
And there are institutions, there are neighborhoods that need to be transformed, that are
we got to transform neighborhoods
outside of the purview of a policymaker in who's an elected official. There
How are we gonna do that?
Administrators and CEOs and presidents who have the power to transform policies.
How are we gonna do that?
Within their spheres, within their institutions. And so we should be focused there. The last thing I'll say about voting is I wrote a series of.
He didn't answer the question again. There's other people who we have to transform, I guess, with force. I don't know, with cancel culture. How do we do that? I guess with cancel culture, with diversity training, which I will cover next week. Thank you, Jimmy.
Pieces for The Atlantic early this year.
And they actually posted it?
Sought to get Americans thinking about who I call the other swing voter.
The other swing voter.
And not the traditional swing voter who swings from Republican to Democrat, who are primarily older and white.
Who cares about these old white people? Don't care about those people. Who we got to care about? Tell me.
I'm talking about the people who swing from voting Democrat to not voting at all.
So, yeah, right. That's the one. If the people just would vote Democrat more, then we'd have magic powers and everything will be awesome. That's the answer.
These people are typically younger and they're typically people of color, but they're especially young people of color, especially young Black and Latinx Americans. And so
Latinx people.
We should view these people, these young Black and Latino voters who are trying to decide
Latinx,
whether
which
to
one?
Vote as swing voters in the way we view these people who are trying to decide.
So what he literally just said is, stop talking to white Republicans. Don't talk to them. It's not worth it. Instead, get the young kids who aren't voting to vote for us instead, and we'll push those guys out. Did I miss what he just said? I think that's what he just said. He said, don't talk to these old white people. Don't talk to them. They're all Republicans and stuff. Ignore them. Instead, talk to the young kids of color. We'll just get them to vote and we can push the white people out.
Between whether to vote for, let's say, Trump or Biden in the general election. In other words, to view them both as swing voters is to view them both in a way that, okay, we need to persuade these people. They're not political cattle. We're not just going to turn them out. We need to encourage and persuade them. And then we also, for these other swing voters, need to make it easier for them to vote. And typically, these young people of color, it's the hardest for them to vote because of voter suppression policies.
Okay, that is a blatant, there's zero evidence of that. He just made that up. If there is any issue with young people of color voting, people of color voting, it's older people of color. Youngsters know exactly how to do everything. They get it. That's insulting. What, because you're young and black, you don't know how to vote? Stop. Zero evidence of that. You've made that up. Another blatant lie. That's just not true. Older, that's true, right? Particularly those people who are very old, like in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, because they lived through actual voter suppression in the 60s. So some of them actually lived through that. So if you're 80 or 90 and you're black, yes, that's 100% true. They lived through actual come to the booth and I will beat you to death. They lived through that time. So for them, they still have issues and concerns, and they're older. They're not on the internet. That's an actual thing. And we can work on that. There are ways of solving that problem. That's a real problem. Young people who don't know how to vote or it's hard to vote, absolute garbage. 100% not true, made up. He just made that up.
Thank you, Ibram. Well,
and they're like, thank you for lying to us and not answering our questions. Thank you for speaking so nicely and saying nothing. I'm so glad this TED Talk had zero value except to let Larry Sharpe roast you a little bit. Whatever.
We're going to come to a close of this interview, but I'd love to ask you to read something that you wrote a couple.
No, I don't want to read that. It's fine. That's the end. This was nothing but bad. That was nothing but bad. Yes, just bad. We'll move on. So I took a dinner break and I see he's still on. This was a long one. This TED Talk was an hour, and then I got to talk about that. So that's why that happened. So yeah, it was long, AJ. I've given you guys 2 hours tonight. Usually I give you only about an hour and about maybe an hour and a half. Absolutely. So yes. Voter suppression. What voter suppression in a place like New York? Dems run it all. Yes, that's absolutely correct. In a place like New York, the only voter suppression is non-Democrats. And I mean that seriously. If you look at what happened in New York City, this is a true story. A letter went out from some PAC or some political committee, I don't remember who it was, that said, if you want to have influence on the mayoral election, switch your party Democrat. I'm not joking. This actually happened. And a letter went out everywhere saying, you have to be a Democrat because the city's 70% Democrat. So whoever wins the primary is going to be the mayor. That's what they're actually saying. And to be clear, you might think, well, that's just some crazy group. No, our Governor Cuomo said that we'll be picking a new mayor in June. That's what he said, his words. We're picking a new mayor in June. Why? Because June is Democratic primary. So you're correct. No worries, 2020. You are absolutely correct. Yes. And he just says, nothing this guy has said blows air up my shorts, keister. I love that. Yes. Sam says, what he said, Larry, was that young POC don't know how to vote unless they register and vote Democrat. Yeah. I think IBX thinks young POC should not have mental freedom. I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, that's really the issue, right? The idea that young people of color don't know how to vote is just insulting and demonstrably incorrect. It's just not true. Yes. Larry, I think most of us don't think that there's nothing wrong. It's that the government hammer is not the solution. Yes. Thank you, Keith. And this is a problem I think you find with left and right, right? And I mean this for the people who are talking about policy. Most of the people on the right talking about policy go, nothing's wrong, leave it alone. Most people on the left talking about policy go, more government hammer. I know we hit you once. Let's hit it 3 times. I think that's what's happening now in America. Now, that's gone back and forth depending upon what's been happening in the country. Right now, this is a situation that most politicians are talking about. Very few are talking about answers. Very few are. So, yes, it seems that the movement is with the warhammer. Yes, absolutely. So, see if I grab a couple more here. Why is he making the discussion over political? It was supposed to be about race. He's just pushing socialism. Sadly, yes, right? When I first heard about him, I thought that he was going to be talking about more controversial racial issues. I thought, being a Democrat, that he might be, against the war on drugs or against, what are those subprime mortgages? These are actual policies systems that affected people of color far more than white people. And you can look at it and you can change it, right? And look, I'll always bring this up. If people are going to talk about the idea of white privilege, okay, fine, white privilege. All right. So what makes white privilege? A system gives any privilege, any privileges. In this case, white privilege could be male privilege. It could be insert thing privilege, right? Whatever the privilege is, it's given by a system, right? I'll go back to literally Middle Ages, the Balkans. When the Ottomans were taking over the Balkans, they made a system to where if you were a Muslim, you didn't pay certain taxes and you were able to have certain types of businesses. Is that individual person, a bigot because they don't like Muslims? The individual person may love Muslims, may hate Muslims, may not care, may think Christians are wonderful, may hate them. I don't know. But the system says if you're not a Muslim, you don't get the cool things. That was a system from like 700 years ago. Maybe 600 years ago. That was like 600 years ago. No, I'm still wrong. 500 years ago. It was that time frame, right? So that's that time frame. That was a system. That was systematic bigotry. Not in that case, not racism, but systematic bigotry against people who weren't Muslim. So what happened? A lot of people in that area, in cities particularly, decided to convert and become Muslim because it made sense for them. So he's doing something similar. If you're going to say there's white supremacy or male supremacy or insert thing here, it's a system that has to be changed. The individual doesn't get up and go, ha, I'm male today. Can't wait to be part of the patriarchy and hurt women. Guys don't do that. And white people don't get up and go, oh, I'm white. Can't wait to take care of my privilege and hurt some brown people. That's not happening, right? It's just not happening. It's not a thing. But can a system give people privileges? Of course it can. Or reverse, can a system be set up to hurt people who aren't something? Of course it can. And again, redlining, subprime mortgages, war on drugs, war on poverty. Clearly, these are systems that affect people of color worse. So let's stop talking about white privilege and instead talk about actually changing policies and making things better. The average person is happy to talk about these things. Happy to go, you know what? That system's a bad system. We should change it. Yeah, because I'm not calling you the bad guy. I'm saying the system's wrong. Help me, ally with me to change this system and to make the wrong things right. Frank says, aren't the old white people the most likely to be racist? Valid point, Frank. I think that's probably true. I mean, I don't know that to be true, but it probably is. It does feel that way, doesn't it? It does feel that way. Yeah, absolutely. So if there's much more of this, I had to lynch myself. Please don't, Brian. Please don't. I get it. Thank you. Yes. Vote blue no matter who. That actually worked, Frank, last year. I was surprised how well that actually worked. I think it's silly, obviously, but that absolutely, did. Yes. Jonathan says, Larry, I recommend fee.org. Yes, Fee, another great place. Fee used to be in New York, but we chased them out because we were just bad. So, yes, absolutely. All right, if I can do this here real fast. My county unenrolled libertarians into other. Newsflash for them, I am re-enrolling libertarian. Thank you. Governor Kilmo, the molester, can't stop me from being libertarian. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate you. I really do. Absolutely. So, guys, I hope this was an interesting show for you. I know I went down race again, but it's here, so I'm trying to be topical. I hope what I said makes sense. I hope you valued it. And if you did, do me a favor, one or two things. Click that link that's in the description. Take that survey, finish it, and pass it out. It does matter. My sponsors love it. It makes them very happy. And, of course, if you want to sponsor me directly, $10, $25, patreon.com/sharpeway if you want me to keep going. And I will. And, of course, even afterwards, you can still like, comment, and share. Those algorithms, they like that stuff. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for giving me so much of your time this evening. I promise I won't punish you again next time. I will see you all tomorrow.